feel like I'm going to have to sit down a bit here. This feels a bit more appropriate than trying to stand up because I feel like I'm about to go off the camera frame. So these candidates here tonight are vying to become the next 6 councillors for Hutt City Council Citywide ward, but with every election, there's one thing stepping in the way, and that's your vote. And good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's show. It's in the Ballot. And Brady, can you slightly tap up my camera up a little bit, please? Just because it's cutting off my head. I think that was set up for Stacey. Whoa! Yeah, that looks a lot better. Okay, so tonight we've got round 2 of our Citywide ward candidates, because there's so many of them. We had to put in 2 shows. I hope you enjoyed the women's suffrage special last night, led by Stacey. We had to do something to celebrate 129 years of women having the right to vote. I believe we've got an agreement from our audience on that one. And also I have to say, it's even though it's the 20th here, the 19th there, I'm very proud that Elizabeth's funeral had to happen on Women's Suffrage Day of New Zealand. I can't think of any better day that Queen Elizabeth's funeral to have occurred. Now, before we get to our candidates, we have some great news. We've got your electorate video, and we don't think it's going to glitch because we've changed where we've kept it. So can we sit there and fire off the electorate video, please?
Citywide ward, Hutt City Council. The Citywide ward of the Hutt City Council follows the boundaries of the city limits of Hutt City Council. For those who are wondering who can vote in Citywide ward, that is everybody. Every voter, if you can vote for the mayor, you can also vote for 6 citywide councillors. So you're probably wondering what is unique about the Hutt City. It has 6 bridges crossing the Hutt River, both rail and road. It has 12 train stations within its city limits. It also somehow has 2 high streets, 3 streets with the name Prairie in it, a couple of canals, also 2 Frederick streets. The list goes on duplicate street names, and if we list them off, we'll be here all night long. Now let's get to the important part, the voting system. Hutt City Council Citywide ward uses the voting system first past the post. When it comes to voting, you have 6 ticks on the ballot paper that you can use. You can use up to 6 ticks when it comes to voting for your 6 most preferred candidates you would like to see around the council table for Citywide ward.
Okay, it looks like we finished with the electorate video there. So let's get up with opening statements. Opening statements are 1 minute long, and let's kick off with John. You get to go first.
Thank you very much. Hi, my name's John Middleton, and I'm standing for Council Citywide. I'm standing because I believe Council, I just want to get a better handle on Council financial spending. I'm not saying it's out of control, it may well be, it looks that way a little bit to me. But I just don't have a handle on where it's all going and why. Stuff like the $120 million overheads, there's no real answer to that. We haven't been told anything. So I ask a lot of questions, and I want to know why and where, and because it's ratepayers' money we're dealing with here. And I think it's important that the ratepayer knows, and everything is transparent about that. So that's one of the reasons I'm standing. Another reason is because I believe there's a bit of a disconnect between council staff and councillors. I don't know why that is. When I was at council, there was a lot of cohesion there, and we got a lot of advice to councillors and vice versa. And these days, I just believe that some people just aren't allowed to talk. They're not allowed to voice their opinion around the table. I just want to be there and ask the important questions. A little bit about me. 23 years, at council. As the head of infrastructure contracts. Before that, I worked for Maintech, which was a late of the Hutt City Council for 5 years. 5 or 6 years at Phillips as a telecommunications engineer. That's going way back. That's when puddles had ice in them back in before we had climate change. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, next up, Gabrielle.
Kia ora, is it 2 minutes?
1.
1 minute. Okay, kia ora koutou. Good to be here at the third oldest Wellington Rugby Club, and that is the Petone Rugby and Football Club. Just want to mihi to the mana whenua here, te Aotearoa, Taranaki whānui, ki tūpoko itika, and to thank the good people of Petone, also known as Petone, for allowing us to be here today. Look, ladies and gentlemen, kia ora koutou. I'm here standing as a citywide candidate for Hutt City Council, when I'm standing on my experience as chair of the Wainuiomata Community Board and a member for 6 years, and also my integrity to stand up for the right causes, such as our stand of the community boards stood against the multinational interests in water bottling here in the Hutt, and also looking at issues like climate change and how that's going to affect our children and grandchildren. And secondly, resilience. Resilience is important, and with that also comes climate change, but other issues in terms of disaster preparation, being prepared as a community. But also infrastructure as well. Infrastructure is something I have an interest in as a community board member, but also just as an everyday person looking down our roads and looking at the leaking pipes and the potholes and so forth. Safe communities is very important, and I do have experience in providing safety in communities and can probably add some value to the council table around that. So I hope to stand on my values and stand on those priorities and my experience, the integrity and a heart for the community. Kia ora.
Next up, Jody.
Tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Jody Winterburn. Born and bred Lower Hutt girl. I'm a mum to a 22-year-old and a 26-year-old now. I'm also on the Wainuiomata Community Board and have served for the past 6 years. And it's kind of been a bit of an apprenticeship now for my calling to stand for council as a citywide councillor. I'm a Justice of the Peace. I'm a marriage and civil union celebrant. I'm also a mediator. I love bringing people together. I'm really passionate about our people, and one of the reasons why I feel compelled to stand is I want to make sure that our rates rises are not as excessive as what's predicted to happen in the next 8 years, and we need to restore some financial discipline. People that I'm speaking to, they're finding it incredibly difficult with the rising cost of living and then the rates as well. And probably one of my biggest reasons is to not have party politics in local government. I'm really strong about localism, and I think our decisions need to be based in our own good conscience and what's best for our community. Kia ora.
Okay, next up, Kaz.
Tēnā koutou katoa, leho, greetings. My name is Karen or Kaz Young, and I currently live in Waifatu, having recently moved over from Moira, which is still a place that I call home, a place that I've spent the last decade or so with doing community development and connecting with the people there. My background is in youth and community work, and I'm really passionate about people. I currently coordinate the Waifatu Fruit and Veggie Co-op as well. I currently work in retail at Trade Aid. I work at a family fish and chip shop up in Avalon. And I think one of the big reasons why I'm standing again is so that I can bring some of those different voices as someone who walks different parts of life in the city to the table, because I currently don't see those voices being represented well there or represented at all. And I'm really just passionate about how amazing our city can be and already has a lot of great things about it. I guess two things that I'm really passionate about and making sure that I want to see happen is bringing that community voice to the table and ensuring that it actually is there. And I also have a deep passion for social justice and climate change, climate action and climate justice. And a huge part of that in the mahi that I've done in that space is around how do we make sure we've got a really good present, but also a resilient future as well. And when we bring all those things together, how we can have an incredible city for now, but also well into the future. Kia ora.
Okay, next up in your sport for choice, we've got the first, Simon Edwards.
Tēnā koutou katoa, good evening. Yeah, my name is Simon Edwards. I've served 2 terms on Hutt City Council now, and I'm asking for a tick to be to rejoin as one of your 6 citywide representatives. I've had a 40-year career in journalism and still work in the communications role. The highlight was 27 years as editor of Hutt News until 2016. And they were years in which the Hutt News was one of the largest community newspapers in New Zealand, and we won national awards for our coverage of local events. And I certainly got to know very well the city I've called home since 1989. And journalism has taught me some things that I've found very useful as a councillor. It's taught me that almost invariably there were 2 sides to every story, and sometimes 3 or 4. It's taught me to listen carefully, to be open to opposing views, not to take things at face value, and to ask the hard questions. And I do that on council because I take my role very seriously, with a near 100% record of attendance at meetings and workshops. This term, I've chaired the Policy, Finance and Strategy Committee and taken a lead role in district plan and district licensing matters. My priorities are climate change, mitigation and adaptation, and infrastructure. I'd really appreciate your support. Kia ora.
Okay, and moving up to the up a bit, we've got Simon Gibbs.
Hello everyone, my name's Simon Gibbs. I've been a Hutt resident pretty much my whole life. Born and raised here, lived in Mangareki, Apuni, spent my adult life in Nainai, where I've raised my son who is turning 18 shortly. I'm living in Stokes Valley at the moment. My reason for standing, I've been very concerned about the continuing drive for things to be centralised and decisions to be made in central government rather than be made locally. I think that government should be driven from the people, from the bottom up, not from the top down. Often decisions seem to be made outside of Lower Hutt, and they sort of seem to be things that are dictated to us, or things that are happening, and we seem to have no say in that anymore. So I'm standing for that reason. I'm a small business owner and I'm a property manager in my day job. I deal with people from all walks of life in my daily role. I deal with owners, tradespeople, tenants, and all the problems that go along with it. I haven't worked in council, but I've worked certainly my day job. I have to deal with Wellington Water and all the problems there every single day. So yeah, I think the councillors should be representatives of the people and decisions made accordingly. If you vote for me, I'll be happy to represent you. Thank you.
And I certainly would love your Wellington Water contact, please. Next up, Daniel.
Hi, I'm Daniel Roark. I'm a 49-year-old father of 4. My oldest child is 15, my youngest is 3. And I'm standing for council because I believe that our council has some significant issues that it's facing, both with its existing infrastructure, but also some other issues that are rising in our sphere of the world, and particularly that's going to affect us here, which is with respect to energy supply. We are facing potential shortages with power, we're a long way from our generators. Our generators are far in the north and down in the south. Nothing much significant local. And I think that we need to be mindful of that, be mindful of what we need to do to ensure that we have good energy supply here to keep our industries going, to keep our area going. I also am significantly concerned about the council-driven consultation rather than community-driven consultation. I think that it's important that our people are consulted. Our people are the ones that are driving the council agenda and not the other way around. And I hope that you will consider me for your vote for the Citywide ward.
Okay, next up, Mark.
Kia koutou. I'm Mark Atkin. I've lived in Lower Hutt since I was 4 years old. I've noticed over a few meetings now that there's a lot of commonality in policy positions and a lot of common issues that everyone obviously sees as important. And I don't think we can make a choice of 6 candidates based on purely those policy positions. So I want to concentrate on the skills that I bring to this role. I have 3 tertiary qualifications in science, law, and productivity improvement. All those disciplines have a common thread, and that is gathering facts, evidence, data, and putting them together to reach conclusions, make proposals. I also have 20 years experience in central government, so I'm used to stakeholder engagement and using the feedback from that engagement to again feed back into the mix of facts and data to come up with sound operational policies. And that's the era I worked in operational policy. That sounds quite academic, I guess, but I also am a very practical person. I'm a self-taught carpenter, cabinet maker and joiner. I've worked in that trade both on the tools and as in management. I also built my own 300 square metre house in Kelson. When I was in my 20s, I built effectively a long wheelbase high cube transit van like you see today, 7 years before Ford's brought out the jumbo model. Being ahead of the game is something I'm quite used to. As part of financial investment advice I get from the United States, I receive a lot of information about new technologies, and some of them are disruptive technologies. When I look at decisions that we face, especially around transport, for example, I see that these can have a significant impact on the decisions we make. And so being aware of those things now, to me, gives me an advantage of being able to have a future focus on where things might go and not make decisions that might turn out to be not that practical once technology changes, which, as we all know, is changing at an incredibly fast rate right now. So that's an overview of the skills I bring to the job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, candidates, for the opening statement. So we're going to take a quick break here and we'll get across to our question boxes to see what questions these candidates are going to be choosing. Back to It's in the Ballot here. So with It's in the Ballot, we have 30 sealed boxes here with questions in them. 28 of them got questions. 2 of them have got what we call booby questions, known as dodge the question and defer the question to another candidate. If a candidate receives dodge the question or defer the question to another candidate, they will be, they'll keep it as their get out of jail free card, with the principle behind it is to not actually be using that, because if they are, they're trying to get themselves out of the question. And then they will re-choose another box to keep the show going. Now, in with the theme last night, we'll make sure every candidate gets 2 questions, so we're fair, and all candidates have been sent questions before the show because we want them to have informed answers, not wishy-washy answers fought off on the hoof, or potentially having questions sit there instead down the path of a way where, say, a candidate you might be setting them up for a prison jail sentence if you sit there and do it. So we've excluded those because, they're not helpful at all. And, you might claim they've broken a promise when, really they should never have actually promised that. So just shows how good we got it here. I like this. We've got Kaz, you're up first. What box number?
Ruatako Marua. 22, please.
Okay, question number 2 on the question sheet. What are you going to do for Stokes Valley with all the new housing going in, e.g. water, sewage, roading, etc.?
So this is obviously not just an issue that is just a problem and a challenge in Stokes Valley. Across our whole city, we currently have challenges with our infrastructure as we see this intensification happen across our city. I think in particular with Stokes Valley, we have challenges around how we actually deal with things like car parks as well. Public transport isn't the most accessible there, although that's not particularly a Hutt City Council responsibility. I think that is something that we could be doing in terms of advocacy. So if I was to get elected, I think advocacy in terms of public transport around some of those issues is really important. But I also just think we need to invest quite heavily in the infrastructure and be really smart about how we do that. And I also think we just need to be really mindful about how our district plans line up as well, so that we have really good consistency, but also a clear sense of where intensification should happen. So it's not just everywhere, because we can't actually afford to do infrastructure everywhere as well.
I'm hoping that fixes the problem. Yes, it did. Pull the cable out and put it back in. This is what happens when you have that lovely thing that looks like static, which I think is a bit of a foreign thing for us now with digital TV. But somehow we've managed to make it come back for tonight for a little glimpse. John, you're up next. What box number? No. It works here. You chose it. You brought it. Now you got to answer it. Nice. That's working now. And you get the proud one of our first Get Out of Jail Free card, known as Defer the Question to Another Candidate. So what replacement box number are you going to pick? Okay, question number 7 on the question sheet. Why should I vote for you? No political jargon, please.
Right. When I worked at council, I always listened to people. I loved engaging with people and listening to them and getting their points of view. So the way I see things at the moment, that's not necessarily happening. And I think it's really, really important that we do that. So, and I call that customer service, because it's all about our people. I think we need to get out there more and get their true ideas and what they're thinking about, what we can do better, and listen. And I like to get Hutt City Council staff into a space that they can thrive in at the moment. I know a lot of present and past staff who are feeling it really hard. If you haven't got a happy team, you haven't got a thriving and productive team. So I really feel for them at the moment. I know there's 200 odd staff left, one way or another, whether that's 100 odd been restructured out and 100 plus that have left of their own free will because they can't handle it. Whether that's too much work or what, I don't know, but it's something that needs looking at. So I'm quite passionate about getting that and getting some good people back and making it work. I don't want them to feel threatened. I want them to be able to speak their mind. At the moment, I don't believe that's correct and or not happening. And another thing I do think is the ratepayer deserves to have more say. I think I repeated that, but they deserve to have their say and actually be listened to.
Okay, next up, Mark, what box number? Just want to ask, is there a 13 in your street where you live down? Or have they magically moved it out? Okay, it is question number 8 on the question sheet. The entry into Stokes Valley is no longer fit for purpose given the increase in population and traffic into the valley. It is chronically bottlenecked, is vulnerable to flooding and accidents, and indirect, so wastes petrol. What will you do to gain Stokes Valley a direct on-off access to the motorway, which is technically an expressway at that point?
Well, a cross river link to State Highway 2 was actually talked about when I was in my early 20s. That's back in the 1970s. So the need is obviously even greater now with increased traffic, increased population. But if that's just going to add to the other projects that are increasing traffic to State Highway 2, it's not going to get us very far. If those people, most of those people are going to work in Wellington, we need improved public transport as well. So I see this as a question that's in part combined with a wider, a bigger picture structure of how we deal with transport in Lower Hutt. I mean, I noticed this evening coming in here, the string of traffic coming in from Wellington. Every car has a single driver, and we were looking at that back in the 1980s and complaining about it then and saying, what are we going to do about it? When I was working in Wellington, before I got mandated out of work, I used to catch the train, and I don't know why most people can't, to be honest with you. So that's my position.
And I'll be guilty. I did come here on my own, but I'll be taking Ray back with me because we came from 2 different directions. Next up, Mr. Edwards. What box number?
My granddaughter Mariah is 2, so hopefully that will bring me some luck, that number. Thanks, Sam.
Fingers crossed. God, we seem to have these natural disaster questions seem to keep popping up at the moment. Question number 26 on the question sheet. With the recent slips on Wainuiomata trapping people in the suburb, how will you help the Wainuiomata councillors get a second alternative route to Wainuiomata, and will you aim to have it in the long-term plan?
That's a really tricky one because I don't want to give Wainuiomata false hope. I think a second route out of that suburb is probably quite a long way away, to be honest. When you think that the Melling interchange, which has been a project on the cards for quite a while, is costing $420 million. The last time they looked at an alternative route out of Wainuiomata coming over to Nainai was back in the 1980s, and even then it was priced at $36 million. So goodness knows what it is now. It's incredibly frustrating for those people who live in Wainuiomata when they're trying to get over the hill and bits of hillside are falling down. We certainly need to look at this ways to stabilise that hillside. Certainly look at tall trees at the top of the hillside to see whether they need to be removed in case that's one of the reasons we're having soil coming down. Echo what Kaz said, we've got to work with Greater Wellington Regional Council in a much more close way over public transport to lessen the amount of traffic on that road, give people more options, make sure that public transport is linking up with rail. With our Better Off funding from Three Waters, 36 million, all the current councillors are talking about dedicating the lion's share of that to resilience work that would be pertinent to Wainuiomata, Stokes Valley type situations. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
No problem there. Next up, Daniel, what box number?
Number 23. It's a special number for me.
I think it's also a prime number as well.
It is. It's the date of my wedding anniversary and also the date of my birthday.
Ooh. Okay, question number 13 on the question sheet. Oh, here we go there. Did you attend the protest at Parliament in March, and what are your thoughts on it now?
I did attend the protest at Parliament, and it was actually mostly in February. It ended in March. I had a wonderful time there. I spent a lot of time actually helping people with with making sure that they got food and resources. I was saddened the way that things ended, and I think what really tears at me the most is the lack of consideration from our elected representatives to actually come out and hear the issues that were being brought to the table. I think there was certainly a clear consensus that people were unhappy and suffering under the mandates, and that needed to should have been addressed better. And I think that there are a significant proportion of our population that actually are quite upset with how the government brought its policy to bear without reasonable consultation.
Thank you. Next up, Gabrielle. What box number?
Sam, I'm 29 years old, going on 30, so I'm going to choose 29.
Why not? Why not? As I say, I can't do that now because I'll be asking for box 31. Okay, question number 17 on the question sheet. Should councils be forced to treat their potable water with fluoride?
Sorry, I didn't hear that before fluoride. The what's water? sorry?
Should councils be forced to treat their portable water with fluoride?
Oh, portable water.
AKA your drinking water out of the tap.
H2O sort of, okay.
Yeah. Well, your tap water, effectively.
Look, I must admit, I'm not really an expert on that issue. My understanding is it came out in regards to, I think, is it mothers, new first-time mothers or something like that? When I'm not an expert, so I can't really respond to that. What I do know is that there's an expectation, I think, that councils do comply with that, and whether that's from regional council or central government down. I am saying that I don't even think it's fully covered here in the Hutt. I think parts of even Petone don't even have it. And others who sort of are more closely in touch with that issue here in Petone might be able to answer that more fully. But yeah, I don't know, sorry.
No, not a problem. Don't mind. We love the honesty. Next up, Mr. Gibbs. That's it. I think that's the easy way to remember when there's two Simons there. At least there's no two Johns.
Yeah, that's fine. Everyone calls me Mr. Gibbs. Number 17.
17. Yeah, well, you do feel like was it a teacher that was at my college? Well, not teacher. Actually, no. She was Mrs. Gibbs, the teacher, but her brother-in-law was also a teacher in the same department. Funny enough. I think he was meant to cover her maternity leave, and then she ended up covering another teacher who ended up being off work for like the rest of the year. All the fun stuff that goes, you remember from 7th form at college. Okay, question number 28 on the question sheet. What's your biggest priorities for the next term, and how do you intend on delivering that?
My biggest priorities are representing the people of Lower Hutt. Like I said, I think our biggest thing at the moment is we've got an increased drive for centralisation from our central government, and a lack of community consultation and community-led government. I'm really concerned about that. That's what I'm standing for. Yeah, that's my biggest priority.
No problem. Next up, Jody, what box number?
Number 16, please.
Number 6. Trying to remember where they're all hidden. And I think you're going to like this question. What's your vision for Wainuiomata for the next 3 years that you want the council to achieve?
What number is that, please?
Question 3.
3. Yes.
Considering from what you just said earlier, being on the Wainuiomata Community Board, that fits perfectly for you.
It does. So, yes, I've been an elected member of the Wainuiomata Community Board the past 6 years. The last 3 have been the worst. The Mayor told me and the board at the beginning of the triennium that he plans to allow the board to have more delegations. He said he'd arrange a meeting with us in the new year. That was 3 years ago. No meeting, no delegations. In fact, there are now less. There's less input facilitated from our board to council. I'd go so far as to say that often I feel stonewalled on issues. It felt like the board was made to be ineffective and that personalities and agendas of those within council saw the board as a barrier to push through what they wanted, such as our voice for the affected residents around the Cleanful. That was a big debacle. The proposed new one the proposed one at the moment that was actually going to be a non-notifiable consent, but we may have a notifiable one now, so that's good. Wainuiomata are sick of being a dumping ground, and there's a school within metres of the proposed Cleanful, a kindy, residential housing, industrial type businesses, not to mention the new dog park and the bike track and the Wai wetlands where hundreds of plants have just been planted. So in short, I'd like to make sure that the board is well supported and received by councillors, ward and citywide, to encourage Wainuiomata's voice at the table when making decisions for them. That's my priority. Boards can be incredibly valued, but not when they're stifled by council. Thanks.
Thank you so much. It's very well detailed. I want to ask, what legal structures, because I'm from an area where we don't have community boards, well, we do in Wellington, what delegated roles has your community board been given, and is that also in line with Eastbourne and Petone as well?
I believe so. I believe we all have the same delegations. Yeah, so the main one is naming roads. We also, streets, and there's a new naming policy that's been adopted by council. So
that's not using Hanau or Pariri or High Street or Mairo or Cowrie or Frederick. I'm trying to remember how many duplicate street names that the Hutt has.
Yeah, no, it is a good policy, and but yeah, that was one of our main things. But also allocating funding. But yeah, I just think it could be utilised a lot better with more responsibility and a better partnership with council.
Okay, I'm glad we're all learning more tonight. Gabrielle, what box number?
Oh, that was quick.
Well, we're on the next round of questions. I don't muck around here.
I'm going to choose number 7.
And did you two end up reading each other's minds just there?
Oh, really?
I know I saw 7 flying up on there before you said it, so that's why I was like, oh, okay. Okay, so question number 24 on the question sheet. Should councils be funding and organising community events?
Well, absolutely. I think one of the primary functions of the council is to help facilitate community events, or in fact support the grassroots community groups and their efforts to create community events, whether it's the recent Puanga Spring Festival in Nainai, which was led by Team Nainai and all the community groups there, including the local marae, or whether it's some of the football events that we put on with the Hutt Multicultural Council amongst the ethnic community. So look, it's all about community focus, and I think that's the main focus of council. One of their main foci is to help with community events. And wrapped around the community events, of course, is community wellbeing. So you will see a lot of that H2A sort of portable water, sunscreen, and the likes out here in summer.
Yeah. As long as you can make it very quick. Your microphone, so those at home can sit there and hear.
I just noticed in the long-term plan, correct me if I'm wrong, Simon or Brady, currently 5 cents in every $100 is spent on community events. Okay.
That's an interesting, and I'd say a dismal figure. But, I mean, you know, I'd love to see what could be a plan to make that move on. Simon Edwards, you're up next. What box number?
Let's go for number 5, Sam, please.
Number 5. Okay, question number 11 in the question sheet, which is quite good. Do you support more housing? And if so, how and where would you achieve it? I do notice the part ward has been dropped from that in the editing stage.
Well, we definitely need more housing. We've got a housing shortage. We've got people living in garages and cars in Lower Hutt, and that's simply not acceptable. People living in overcrowded houses, and council's trying to do something in terms of those people with a $500,000 package to help with emergency housing and help negotiate with landlords and so on. I believe we have no choice but to intensify the city, because apart from anything, the government has mandated plan change or an intensification planning instrument on it, and we've responded to that. I do wish they'd listened to us and allowed us to have a lot more
When
leeway
does central
about
government do that, though?
where that intensification went. I believe in going up rather than out. Going out just means you've got to pay for expensive infrastructure and transport links that aren't there. I'm a big believer in Riverlink. I see a massive opportunity for more inner city living apartments there. With the moved South Melling station, a footbridge over the river for cyclists and people walking. It's just a game changer for the city. And it should mean also that a greater frequency of trains on the Melling line. We'll see them going into the evening for longer and into the weekends once Riverlink is complete and we've got the floodway and the interchange sorted out. That's where I'd like to see more housing, not out in the far-flung suburbs. And the other important thing about intensification, and the current council has moved to achieve this, is that we get developers to pay a contribution towards the cost of paying for that growth infrastructure so that the cost doesn't fall on existing ratepayers.
Okay, and I do hope when they do build the Melling train station, they put two platforms there, not one. Otherwise, that frequency issue might be a problem. Jody, you're up next. What box number?
3, please.
3, no problem. I like your impeccable eyesight that you can pick that up all the way from down there.
Good guess.
Because I know I certainly wouldn't be able to get it from my desk down there, seeing what's down there. Question number 9 on the question sheet. What will you do to deal with the latest bad result from the staff satisfaction survey at Hutt City Council?
Right. What I would do. Well, I couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore. That's why I'm running in this election. After what I've seen in the last 6 years as an elected member on the Wainuiomata Community Board, dealing with councillors, the mayor, officers, staff, and somewhat added layers of bureaucracy to even get an answer to questions, I've noticed frustrations, bullying, stonewalling, approximately 200 staff who have left council, like John said, in the past 3 years. And there is a sense of a real top-down approach to everything, including decision-making. This needs to be a bottom-up approach. And I'm a person who actually has an innate desire to actually bring people together. And all of my roles in the past and now is what I do. I don't have any personal or political agenda to further myself in any way. I actually just have a desire to do the best that I can for people. And whilst it wouldn't actually be my job to address the staff satisfaction survey as a councillor, I certainly would add to a new and refreshed culture at council. And I think, being valued in any work environment is really important. And I think that I can influence people through many ways. This ultimately is a job for the chief executive and, of course, the boss of the CE, the mayor. We need a change, in my opinion, to actually address this in a meaningful way.
Okay, next up, Mark. What box number? Yes, it is. Gee, you're all good at not picking numbers that we've already used. I'd like to say, have you all got earpieces telling you what numbers have been chosen or something that you haven't sat there and told me about? I was going to say, I think the GCSB might be a bit closer to home on that one. Oh, I don't know. One of them's funded by the Kiwis and one of them's funded by Americans. And I certainly know which one I prefer on that one because at least they're employing Kiwis, or they should be. Okay, so question number 6 on the question sheet. What are your priorities to work on for the next 3 years if elected?
Oh, well, I think we all realise that there are three main priorities here. Getting basic infrastructure right has got to be one of them. Addressing the population increase and the housing and transport needs that go with that, that's critical. And also, I think building community resilience is one that's important to me. We could face a major earthquake and cut off from services quite easily here. It's expected, in fact, that there'll be an alpine fault shake in the foreseeable future. So I think building resilience within the city is really important. I'm glad that this council currently is promoting things like rainwater collection and home gardens and community gardens, whereas other councils, not so far from here, are trying to ban these sorts of things. Real smart, not. So yeah, those would be my priorities.
Okay, next up, Kaz, what box number?
I've been on the Petone Community Board for the last 6 years, so I'm going to go with Ono.
So with 6. Had to make me think there.
Got to keep you on your toes.
It's all right. I'm about to do some more walking across now. You have received the card. Dodge the question. Now, you can also be like Wayne Guppy and keep it for the council chambers in there. So when the councillor has some curvy questions, you can say, do you need this to get out of it? So what's your replacement box number?
Tahi, number 1.
And I like to say, is that what we're meant to put on the ballot paper for you up here?
Just a tick would do fine.
Yes, joys of what happens, the difference between STV and first past the post. Okay, question number 27 on the question sheet. What is your immediate actionable plan for upgrading decaying and failing infrastructure such as sewage, water and stabilization of our hillsides for critical routes and suspending non-critical projects?
So the questions seem to be following me around Stokes Valley and other issues such as that. And I think there is quite a bit of stuff that we need to think about as a whole city in terms of our resilience. I think that we definitely need to make sure I think the community stuff's really important, so making sure that we actually stay engaged and communicating well with our community. That's first and foremost for me, because ultimately you cannot get around doing things without making sure that they know what's going on. And that's the immediate thing for me, like making sure that you've got the right people in the room who need to know what's going on. I definitely think that so for me, I always think about a number of different things in terms of what things need immediate solutions. So let's just put things in place first up, but then also let's do things well. So if you're going to do it and you're going to invest quite a bit of money into some infrastructure or anything that needs to be in place, perhaps do something temporary to at least hold that so that when you do something properly, it's done really, really well the first time round, because if you have to keep going back to it, it's going to cost a lot more. And I also just think that that whole korero needs to be framed within good community resilience. So what else are we doing to ensure that people aren't put out in different ways? And for me, that's why I'm really passionate about seeing how we actually build that in for future years to come, because we need to make sure that actually every part of our city, particularly ones that can be cut off easily, can be resilient within itself. It can't just be something that, I look at Wainuiomata, I look at Stokes Valley, I look at Calston, I look at a number of our suburbs that have that one entry exit, and I kind of go, oh gosh, we are in such a vulnerable place, and how do we actually make sure that we perhaps, build that resilience in by talking about 15 to 20 minute cities and ensuring that we actually have good ways of actually moving forward in the future.
Oh, thank you. Next up, Simon Gibbs. What box number?
19, thanks.
19. No, that's been taken.
What's
In front of it's 18.
Yeah, you choose, mate.
Yeah, go 18. I was nearly, So the first time we've had, chosen a number that's been chosen. So that earpiece fairy has definitely now fallen out the window that I had just there. Okay, question number 14 on the question sheet. Do you support the use of masks, especially indoors, as an important tool for keeping COVID at bay and others safe? And this probably was written when the traffic light system was still in place.
Look, my thoughts on masks is if people want to wear masks, then wear a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask, then don't wear a mask. it shouldn't be forced on people. I mean, there's a lot of medical reasons, a lot of reasons why people don't want to wear masks. And when they go into a supermarket, when they go into a pharmacy, when they walk into a public space and they're harassed about them, and constantly have to answer for their reasons for not wearing a mask, I mean, it just went a bit over the top, I think. If people want to wear them, I don't have a problem. And yeah, that's what my position on masks. But hopefully that's sort of been agreed to by the government now. So yeah,
and hopefully
bit of a moot question.
And hopefully satisfies the questioner there. Next up, Daniel, what box number?
I'll go number 30.
Okay, question number 16 on the question sheet. What are your thoughts on Hutt City shifting to voting using single transferable vote instead of first past the post?
Yeah, it's a trade-off really between simplicity and a slightly, not marginally fairer system for and STV only really works with respect to when you're voting for more than one candidate for a particular, or voting for several seats, as we have for our citywide.
And also, if say people do, was it hedging their bets as well, such as I think we've got a mayoral candidate who's standing for Citywide, as an example. We don't, in Wellington, Andy Foster's votes were redistributed, whereas up here Campbell's weren't. At the last election is a great example.
Yeah, absolutely. So in complex voting situations, there certainly is a benefit. But for a straight runoff for a single position, then first past the post really fits the bill. And it's like, well, what's the bigger picture in terms of how the wards are going to be structured going forward as to whether STV is actually going to be worthwhile.
No, fair enough. And we definitely do make sure with every It's in the Ballot show here, we at least explain for this particular show what voting system they're using, because that is something that comes up with, especially in say, both for Lower Hutt and Upper Hutt. The city councils are at first past the post, but the regional councils are at STV. So it does cloud things a little. So, yeah. Next up, John, what box number? Okay, question number 19 on the question sheet. How do you propose to foster a more positive and public impression of more active modes of transport, such as cycling and walking? You need your mic.
That is a good question and a really interesting question. To me, getting people in and out of the city is a challenge for Hutt City at the moment, and getting River Link and all that sorted, and Melling Link and all that is great. But once we're in the city, we need to think about how we're going to get everyone around, better ways of moving around and not so much congestion. So looking at more robust ways for cycling, walking, particularly along our footpaths. They need a lot of improvement. And with transport and traffic strategies about getting in and around the city to some of the places people are attracted to coming into Lower Hutt. They don't want to be coming into a bit of a nightmare and stopping all over the place and getting stuck in traffic. So I think there needs to be a bit of a plan and a bit of a survey. Traffic engineers need to be brought in, someone with experience, to see how we can move around the city easier.
Okay, now we're about to hit for a break, but I want a show of hands. Here's an idea, and I don't mind if you take this from me. Would you support a centralised hub for people with mobility issues that they can park up their car and they can get a free hire of a mobility scooter to travel around the city? Can I get a show of hands of who would definitely sit there and support that idea and take it to council? You're welcome to use it. That's something I definitely would love to see somewhere trial it. We've suggested it for Newtown, but I would be keen. You're welcome to steal that one from me. I'm very keen for that idea to go. Okay, so we'll be now taking our hard break here, and we'll be back after the break with hard-hitting questions.
We're driving cars on a Mars tonight. We're blasting off to the stars tonight. We wanna go, go. We wanna go, go. We're driving cars on a Mars tonight. We're blasting off to the stars tonight. We wanna go, go. We wanna go, go.
Okay. I think we're having fun we're playing around with the mute key. So welcome back to It's in the Ballot. We've had our bit of a break and we've had a bit of a mix and mingle with our candidates across the board with the audience. So now let's get ready for hard-hitting questions. Let's just sit there and skip the graphic. It's not like, I mean, people have seen it every night. Yeah. Okay, I don't know what happened to the file tonight on the computer. I might have accidentally deleted when we tried to delete the electric video, just because we've changed where we've stored it to reduce the computer from crashing. So with hard-hitting questions, these are questions that many members have repeatedly submitted on or very topical issues of the area. So we'll be getting all candidates to answer our hard-hitting questions. So let's start off with, I wish I had the weakest link mirror. What is your position on free waters reform and why have you came to that position? Let's start off with Simon Edwards.
Yeah, certainly a question that's exercising a lot of people, and I am in favour of three waters, though I'd rate that at about 70-30, because I definitely see there are some issues with it. The big one, of course, is accountability, and some of the things that the Office of the Auditor General pointed out resonate with me, and I worry over such a large area that Entity C is going to cover, how the priorities that are important to our city are going to be weighed up and compared against priorities in, the Hawke's Bay and the top of the South Island. I think we've got a head start on that because we've got an ambitious budget that outlines what we want to achieve at least in the next 10 years with looking after our infrastructure. So we're off to a head start. But the current system is clearly not working, and we're in a relatively good position compared to some councils. And there are some smaller councils in New Zealand that are just not going to cope with infrastructure demands coming forward. And I think we do have to take a New Zealand-wide view. I don't buy the theft of assets argument because those assets are going to remain in public ownership, and there's very, very strong safeguards to make sure that they do. But what really gets me across the line in favour of three waters is the affordability issue for this city. Hutt City Council can borrow 2.5 times its revenue to pay for big projects. These big entities can borrow 8 to 11 times their annual revenue and spread it over a much longer time period. And if you look at the challenges in front of us, we've just had the newspaper headline, 1.2 billion of infrastructure needed in the next 30 years, and we've got a very ambitious budget. It only covers 18% of that. So just on that alone, I think Three Waters reform makes the grade.
Thank you. Next up, Kaz.
I feel like Simon has said a lot in terms of the detail, which I agree with. But I think for me, a huge part of Three Waters is around the fact that water is not just about me. It's not just about everyone in this room and the people watching, but it's actually a number of us all across the whole country. And that's for me why I'm supportive of reform. I think we need to actually be thinking more broadly, not just ourselves. So I'm supportive of reform in that regard. I do have some concerns about the process that has been taking place, and I guess some of the questions around what does local control actually mean, and how does that community voice seep into that as well, because I think without locals knowing what's going on and being able to have a say in the things that directly impact them, that is a huge concern for me. And so although I'm really supportive of reform because of the reasons pretty much that Simon outlined in terms of that cost, and it has to be something that is secured for us for the future, because without water, we're all stuffed. So yeah, I'm really supportive of reform.
Okay, next up, Simon Gibbs.
Yes, I oppose Three Waters on many levels. While the argument is a valid one that water infrastructure around the country is failing in many cases, that doesn't mean that the Three Waters reforms are the solution. My main three problems with Three Waters can be boiled down, excuse the pun, to the following. Loss of local control and decision making. While it's been said that councils will retain ownership, there was a thing commissioned by the Taxpayers Union through law firm Franks Ogilvie, and that was overseen by a Queen's Counsel lawyer, shows these claims to be utterly false. To quote those claims, they've been calculated to deceive parliamentarians, and when it becomes law, to deceive New Zealanders generally. I'm unsure why I'd support something that has been written to deceive every New Zealander. The economic cost, it's been argued obviously about the debt structure of council. However, we're going to pay for it one way or the other, either through our rates or pay for it through taxes or inflation. So there's no two ways around. Just because it's going to be not paid for through our rates bills, that doesn't mean we're not going to pay for it. And also, I'm concerned about it being a road to privatisation. We are borrowing against those assets to take on those loans. Now, if we were in the future to ever default on those loans, well, we've lost our water infrastructure. The people who've loaned us that money will take the collateral or the underlying assets that have been used to borrow against it, and that's that. So, and also, yeah, just from a democratic point of view, 61 out of 67 councils opposed it. It was meant to be voluntary, and it's being rammed through. So I'd actually support a referendum, and I think a nationwide referendum for Three Waters. It's a very important piece of legislation, and I think we should all get our say on that. Thank you.
Okay, next up, Gabrielle.
Three Waters is about safe drinking water, our wastewater, and stormwater. So it's a huge piece of local government reform. And some of the issues that were mentioned tonight in terms of infrastructure, we don't want to end up like the discharge that took place, I think it was a few years ago, up in Lake Taupo. We don't want to see sewage through our streets or our leaking pipes. So in short, I think there needs to be a solution to this disagreement in New Zealand about Three Waters, but I think it was said just before, it's not the solution. Then my question back is, what is the solution? Because with the 1.2 billion bill that we have to play catch up and that's just in Lower Hutt alone. We are currently in winter using more water now than we usually do in summer, and summer is when we use the most water. We're facing an $800 million bill to try and find, to the cost to the ratepayer, to try and find an alternative source of water if we don't back down on our water usage now. So, you know, and I'm not picking these figures out of the sky. We're talking billions of dollars. Now, my understanding is that making the best use of the assets across the country on one ledger to borrow against it, so we can start funding some of these solutions. And councils borrow money all the time, and there's loans throughout the history books of councils that can be paid back, but ultimately, it's our generation and our children and grandchildren that will have to be paying it for it one way or another. So I think there needs to be a solution, and I think Three Waters actually addresses part of that solution.
Okay, next up, Jody. I'm not going to ask what box number. How would you like to answer the question?
Okay, well, I'm not an expert, and I actually don't think any single one of us here are experts at all. I actually think that I don't support it purely because I don't know enough. When people have not been given detail, or in fact much information at all, that's very hard to form a decision. There's heaps of unanswered questions, and I'm unsure of what this means in terms of the borrowing capacity for the future of our Hutt City. For example, if we hand over our assets or sell our assets. And I'm also unsure about what the city actually wants. They haven't been actively consulted or engaged with, but what I've seen is in our city is that they don't actually want it, with the limited information they have perhaps. So my opinion as a ratepayer is I don't support it. If I were a councillor though, and I was wearing that hat, I would be seeking and fighting tooth and nail for the information so our city can make an informed decision, because it's the role of a council to inform and advocate for their city, not for themselves. So we can't pretend to be experts and know everything, and you know, it's not right. I do have some questions. You know, Simon mentioned before that you know, there are many safeguards in place. I don't know what those are, what you've heard, or what's been told, but they're not clear to me. And I do also have some issues around, again, our council having a Labour-led mayor. He's signed a pledge. He needs to toe a party line. And I'm not anti-Labour. I'm just anti-central government and our local decision making. This is where representatives, the councils are representative for their communities and for the ratepayer to do the right thing by them. So it's not about what I think, it's about what our city thinks, and we haven't been given the information to actually actively engage.
Okay, next up, Mark.
Yes, I realise that water infrastructure has not been adequately maintained across the country, and that some councils have done a better job than others. Some, especially larger councils, have more capability than others. If central government support is needed, then I don't see that the current planned asset grab as being necessary. One question I have to ask is, when did adding a level of bureaucracy disconnected from a community and it's meant to serve and unaccountable to that community ever make things better or more efficient? A specialist advisory team could provide expertise where that was needed for smaller councils. Funding could be provided where needed from general taxation. I'm also concerned that Three Waters is the first step to privatisation, regardless of what might be in current legislation. Government can change legislation at the drop of a hat, as we've seen repeatedly over the last couple of years. And what have we seen when that happened to railways and electricity prices when they were privatised? So I'm opposed to Three Waters as it's proposed. I'm sure we can find a smarter way of addressing the issue.
Okay, next up, John.
Yeah, it's pretty much like Jody. I think we do need some form of reform, but I'm not convinced by the Three Waters reform. Nothing there, or nothing I've read, has convinced me that it's all true, to be honest. I'm not saying conspiracy, but for instance, saying that we need millions and millions of dollars to get the infrastructure pipes fixed in Lower Hutt. I haven't seen any proof of that. 3 or 4 years ago, Wellington Water are telling us our infrastructure is fine. It's in pretty good condition. 3 or 4 years later, it's millions and millions of dollars in the shit. Pardon the pun. So I don't know what's going on there, and I'd just like to know what the real truth is. And I know that Hutt's infrastructure is far better, than Wellington's. It's a far better condition than Wellington's. Wellington are having a hell of a job keeping up with their leaks and breaks and structures and going all over the place. I haven't seen any major pipe breaks in Lower Hutt for ages. There were quite a few when after the 2016 earthquake, which is to be expected. That settled down, and I know, just a bit of information gathering, that they are 9 months behind on minor leaks in the Hutt Valley. That's just minor maintenance. So you're talking about, if it was roading, you'd be talking about potholes. So they're 9 months behind, and I think that's where a lot of our water's going down the drain. So I just need more information. I just haven't got enough at my fingertips to make a solid suggestion or that, yeah. That's me.
If I may interject here, Sam, because John did the same thing before, is that I'm a bit confused now because I was hearing from that side of the room earlier that we need to listen to our staff, value the officers, and as far as I'm aware, this data comes from the officers, comes from Wellington Water and the council officers. So
And
I'm
our
a bit
mayor is
confused about.
the chair of Wellington Water too.
Yeah, exactly. It's not independent. It's coming from this coming from Wellington Water itself.
And we're not on council.
Okay,
Candidates
we're now
think that
moving
Campbell
on.
is going out and looking at pipes and giving his verdict on them, I think they're being rather deluded. The advice is coming straight from Wellington Water officers, and I think the evidence that just one part of the evidence is that 17 to 18% of our drinking water is just leaking away. We are quite likely to face severe water restrictions this coming summer.
Yeah, because you got 9 months. You're 9 months behind with minor leaks.
Okay, we're now moving on because Daniel
That's
still
where it's
hasn't
going.
given his 2 cents worth. So let's get your.
Well, it's an interesting discussion. Now, I wonder whether there is a one-size-fits-all answer to this. My view is that we don't need to hand over the assets to some third-party unelected authority. The council can hold on to the assets, and central government can make that happen. Central government can make our taxes available to us to help with infrastructure where it's needed. And I can't see why that is a problem for them, and why they think that they need to back it with assets. They seem to have been able to produce, $50 billion worth of spending over our COVID response. They can pull similar amounts of money out to spend on water infrastructure if that's required. What I want is experts that are independent that can actually go through and start auditing our water assets across the country, not just Hutt Valley, and actually give us real assessments, give us real solutions, and in many cases where there is dilapidated old infrastructure that needs to be replaced, we can actually build it. We used to be a nation of builders. We used to produce all our own steel, all our own pipes. We can do that again, but we need to have the guts to say, yep, that's us, we can do it still.
And I certainly would like to see a lot more councils move to one of Wellington's best sewage treatment plants being Moa Point, which, even though I believe it has its faults, it's a damn sight better.
I've actually worked at Moa Point.
So it's way up there compared to others?
I haven't, I actually worked on the construction at the Seaview plant as well, but Moa Point was in fine operation when I was there. Certainly it was the best in terms of managing its air pollution to air, because of its current situation, with housing just up behind, just upwind from it, and so they had a quality scrubber plant. They were collecting all the gases from all the settling tanks. Fantastic operation, very, very well run at that stage. I haven't seen what's happened over the last 20 years, of course.
Yeah, no, not a problem. Okay, so let's get on to hard-hitting question number 2. Hard-hitting question number 2 is, what is your position on the $199 million Cross Valley link project, and would you be supporting or opposing it in the long-term plan? Let's start off with Gabrielle.
I'll absolutely be supporting the Cross Valley link. There was talk earlier about access around the city, for example, from Wainuiomata, and I think that this Cross Valley link will address a lot of that hold up in terms of the morning traffic runs and so forth. And I think it's probably the first phase in terms of improving our traffic across the Hutt. Cycling is one of the answers to that. Public transport is another. But we do need to ease this hold up across the valley. And also, you know, in reading it's interesting, in reading the business case plan, I noticed that Stokes Valley has actually missed out. It's not even mentioned in the business case. Wainuiomata has mentioned all the other suburbs about improving that traffic flow. So I think now is the opportune time, and of course, council's probably looking at that. I would like to see Stokes Valley or even the Eastern Hutt Road feature in the Cross Valley link plan, because it's all about the east to west connection.
Okay, next up, John.
Yep, I also support it. I think we need to get that up and running. Once we're coming in and out of the valley, though, I do think we need to make sure that we have something for people to get in here and look at and do stuff around the CBD area. It's definitely going to free up other areas so we can move away and do a bit of cycling or a bit of other work around those areas. But to get into the valley is really good, and to get out would be even better. So I just hope we build around that and we don't end up with all the bells and whistles and end up with a white elephant. So hopefully there's some planning around that area as well.
Sounds like you don't want a 4-lane road that sits there and stops with a 1-lane bridge at the end, by the sounds of that. Okay, Jody.
Nice and easy, yes. Yes, I do support it.
Okay, Mark.
Yeah, so when it can take 45 minutes to get along the Esplanade on a Sunday afternoon, I think we've got a real problem. And we must divert traffic away from there as part of this plan. But as I've said before, I see this link as a bigger transport issue that we have across the city, and it needs to be an integrated approach, because just pushing more traffic on a Highway 2 won't help much. So the link needs to be a multimodal transport solution in itself and as part of a comprehensive citywide approach. I'm aware that there is concern that the current plan will split the Moangarewa community in half. I don't have an off-the-cuff solution for that, but we do need to address it. I recall there were similar concerns in Paraparam when they put the expressway through there. But overall, I certainly support the project.
Okay, next up, Simon Gibbs.
Yeah, I think the idea is a good one in principle. I do have a few reservations just around cost and whether it's going to achieve what it's wanting to achieve. Obviously, getting across the valley, either across the Esplanade or one of the main roads now is, pretty horrible, as we all know. But yeah, it's like Mark said, it has to be part of a bigger roading or bigger infrastructure solution, where if obviously there's the talk about the road from Petone over to Granada and another road potentially, or upgrade of Haywoods, or something needs to be done about getting from State Highway 2 across to the other side of Wellington without having to go all the way down the Naranga Gorge and bottlenecking there. So, look, I think it's a good idea in principle and definitely worth looking into. Thanks.
Okay, next up, Kaz.
So the Cross Valley Link has been a conversation since the 1960s, and it's been one of those lingering things that keeps popping up every once in a while. And in my time on the Petone Community Board, it's definitely been thrown in there a number of times in various reiterations, and still without a set sort of sense of what that actually looks like and what that would mean. And when I first encountered this about 6 years ago, I remember thinking, we're not actually getting to the crux of the issue. And when I think about that, a huge reason why a lot of people keep talking about the Cross Valley Link was they complained about congestion. No one likes congestion. We all complain about it. Whether you're on a bus or whether you're in a car, or even if you're even cycling and you get to zoom past it. You probably appreciate some of it. But there's this dynamic of congestion that we're not actually dealing with or talking about. And I think when we talk about, so the Cross Valley Link, is that about just congestion or is that about other issues as well? So sure, that deals with some congestion to some extent, but if we're not actually getting to the root cause of that, we're actually just shifting the traffic to another road and we're not dealing with the problem. And so for me, I am supportive of the Cross Valley Link when it's modal, because I think that will hopefully help shift people out of their cars as well, which will see people be able to move. But I also think more than anything, Cross Valley Link is about resilience. So for me, that has been the big draw card that's made me go, yes, I'm supportive of this, because I think when we start to look at how we actually look as a city, say in 50 years' time, and when we talk about things like sea level rise and how that impacts Esplanade and Petone, we need to start thinking about what are the things that we're putting in place now, because we don't want to get to a point where it's too late to do anything and we're stuck and we have a new coastline, so to speak. So I think for me, it's a definite yes when we start to see a bit more of that detail with that business case. But I also have some reservations in terms of what that means for our communities. Having lived in Moira for over a decade and having spent quite a lot of time with people, there was still a lot of unknown certainties and questions lingered because we didn't know what the impacts would be to the community, what things might go. For instance, would the Moira Library still be in play? And so how that impacts actual communities is a really significant question that needs to be asked through that process as well. And I want to make sure that in those spaces, we also ensure that those communities have a voice.
Okay, next up, Simon Edwards.
Absolutely well said, Kaz. Some very good points you've made, especially the one about sea level rise making the Esplanade very vulnerable. And I think I found some common ground with John as well. I do support the Cross Valley Link, but I worry, I think Brady put it particularly well last night, we risk, without having some solutions at the State Highway 2 end, just providing a way to get faster to the bottleneck on State Highway 2 and not really gaining anything. We haven't seen the carbon impact assessments for this route yet, and I want to see those because I don't want to see it become a reason for Wainuiomata and Eastern Hutt Valley people to stay in their cars. 56% of our climate change emissions are from transport, and so this route really must provide flexible, cost-effective, and the best solutions we can for mode shift. We need to 1 in 4 of trips currently made in fossil fueled cars need to end by 2030 if we're to join the global fight against climate change. So I support the Cross Valley Link. We need to work with the people of Moira and those who live along Wakefield Street. As Kaz mentioned, this thing's been around for 1960. It's been on and off our books, a whole lot of uncertainty and impacts on those communities. So, people have talked about good consultation tonight. We certainly need to do that in that case. But I do support the road. Thanks.
Okay, and next up, Daniel.
I generally support the concept of the Cross Valley Link. I think that we need that important arterial. I have a number of questions with respect to how it's funded. I think that NZTA, Waka Kotahi, could do a lot more in considering including arterial routes in part of their funding model. No point in having a motorway if nobody can get on it. I'm a dissenter with respect to climate change, so I don't buy that narrative, and I think that your electric vehicles being coal powered really doesn't stack up either, and certainly not the upfront footprint of oil being used to fund to drive all the diggers that are digging up massive amounts of earth ore in order to be able to build your batteries. So that doesn't stack up. But nonetheless, I think that we need to look at how we can do things more sustainably. I think we need to look at how we structure our communities and make it so that we don't send all these public servants sort of around that narrow arterial route into Wellington City in order to be close to the beehive. I think we can do better. I think we need to find better ways of running our operations. We've learned how to use Zoom and video communications. I think that there are better approaches, and maybe a good public transport link that will, or improved public transport link will be a better way to spend big money as well.
And we can certainly say that about this show being filmed online, so those at home can watch, don't have to sit there and come and be a studio audience member talking about, similar things to Zoom. Okay, for hard-hitting question number 3. Please state your top priorities for every Hutt City ward. Let's kick off with John.
Okay, the Wainui ward. I'd like to see more promotion and enhancing of Wainui's natural assets to attract visitors over the hill. I think we can build around that. We got the river link, the Wainuiomata River, the golf course, Rimutaka Forest Park, our coastline. If we can build a few attractions around that and get people over to attract them, they can utilise those wonderful natural resources. For the harbour ward, immediate concern for me is sea level rise. I'm not sure how they're going to, we are going to tackle the upcoming issues there. It's a bit of an unknown, but especially in the eastern bays, one way in, one way out. Everyone's seen the number of storms that have been happening there lately. I think when I was back at council, you could count on 4 probably events a year, and I think they're up around 8 or 9 real events where it's troubling people getting in and out of the eastern bays. Beautiful place to live, but if you can't get there and get out, we have issues. So hopefully the seawall and the cycleway is going to have an effect on that. Personally, I don't think it's enough, and we probably need to look a bit further. Western ward, again, climate concerns. We're up in the hills there, so a lot of slips. We've seen what's happened in Stokes Valley. Anywhere up like in the hilly suburbs like that are vulnerable to that sort of thing. Most of it's caused, well, we all know it's caused by rain, but if we're not catching stormwater and disposing of it efficiently, and it's just going as an overland flow through someone's property down the hill, that's what's going to happen and what's happened at Stokes Valley. I don't think that was anyone's fault. That's just one of those things, but maybe we can look at ways of capturing stormwater before it becomes an issue, going over the side of hills and taking out people's houses. So the Western ward does worry me in that respect, because I have seen quite a few big slips up there at Korokoro just with the last storm. So Northern ward, I like to see some of the footpaths and stuff rejuvenated around Taita, and get everything moving around the Walter Nash. It's a marvellous facility. Even get some cycling assets going along there. I know we've got the one going up Oxford Terrace and stuff like that, but maybe direct a few more things towards the Walter Nash.
We're going to have to start wrapping it up, otherwise we're going to be here all night long.
Okay. Central, just pretty much the same thing. Get 9 Pool moving, get local business promoted, and get that going.
Okay, next up, Jody.
I know that there's lots of issues in every single ward, but I'd like to see some things happen that, that I've been talking to people, a lot of people, and they're really little things. So obviously, footpaths is one thing that we've talked a lot about, and our roading, fixing that, making things, making the roads safe, making our footpaths safe. But there's things that people want, like in Nainai, they would like a supermarket. That's really important to them. I don't know, it's not saying council will go and make one, but we need to look at things like that. Pedestrian crossing across Fairway Drive. You've got to play Russian roulette with your life to cross that road. There's no pedestrian crossing. Right. Yeah, and let's look at safety and things like that. Park benches, people have been talking about, they actually want to beautify their streets. They would quite like some nice park benches. Dog poo bags, for example, at Avalon Park. But apparently council or council and the animal control don't want to encourage dogs to go there, but at the same time there's poo on the grass. So have a dog poo bag. Bins on top, lids on top of bins where the seagulls can't pull out the rubbish. Things like that, I think, are important to people in their communities. We know there's a lot of issues. There are a lot of issues, and there's some big stuff to work on. But anyway, to get to those decisions, I'm not a councillor, and I think it's just incredibly important that it's about communication. Communication's key all the time. It's about consultation. It's not about my idea or the next councillor's idea. It's about what our community wants.
Okay, next up, Kaz.
So I'm going to flip this question a little bit because, sure, there are 6 wards, but the reality of that is there are a lot of suburbs with incredibly varied needs and wants, and just a diverse mix of people there. Actually, there is so much going on. And so for me, a huge part of that is around making sure that we've got healthy, good communities. And for me, that looks like everyone being able to access and engage as well as they can be, whether that be around, for me, like, so for instance, I'm quite supportive of things like the 880 concept, which is ensuring that our streets and our city is in a state where 8-year-olds to 80-year-olds and everyone in between can actually flourish and really enjoy what is in front of them. And I think there's that part in terms of how we actually make sure that there are different things within each space of our city that allows for people to come together to actually just thrive and be who they are in that space and feel like they belong here and are actually proud of our city. For me, there's a huge part around making sure we've got a thriving environment as well. And that's also engaging with climate actions, that's engaging with making sure that we've got a really solid present in terms of resilience, but also moving forward as well so that we've got a really good future ahead of us. And then how those things all kind of come together and how we actually collaborate, because I think there are ways that we can creatively find solutions for things for the future, but also impact and celebrate who we are now. And I think for every suburb, there is a unique sort of way that we can be doing that. So if you actually want to hear my whole list around that stuff, feel free to be in touch. I won't bore you with all my details on that one, but I do think that there are unique things happening across the city. And yeah, some suburbs obviously are close to my heart in terms of some of that, where I've seen some of that happen or where we've tried to do a bit of that. But I also think that there's a lot of suburbs that I'd love to learn a little bit more about.
We've got to start wrapping up.
Done.
Okay, next up, Daniel.
So I have to tautoko Kaz's comments. Now, I agree, but I think everything starts with local community consultation. And I think that means that the council actually has to get out of their ivory tower and go and do some council meetings at least once a year in the local community, whole council. I think that that's hugely important. It will help draw their communities in, and in each suburb, help them feel part of the bigger city, the wider city. Help them feel like they're actually being heard. In that line, I think sort of the next biggest priority really has to be about building resilience. And that's making sure that each community that is, especially like in States Valley, like in Nainai, up in Kelson, that there is a good supermarket resource, that there is good a resource that will also double as emergency food supply. I think that needs to be really considered. Perhaps emergency water supply as well. We talk a lot about three waters. What about putting some more artesian fountains in right across our communities? It's a relatively easy thing to do. It's relatively cost effective, but potentially, will be a lifesaver in emergency situations. There you have it.
Okay, next up, Simon Gibbs.
Thank you. I'm not going to take long on this one. My priorities are the same as in every ward. It's the people of those wards, not necessarily where they happen to be. But look, I like the idea of Daniel holding council meetings in different parts of the city. That's a great idea to get communities involved. And also what Jody was saying about the problems with the Wainui board, I think maybe those community boards should be more empowered and have more ability to decide for themselves what they want in those areas. What works in Wainui might not work anywhere else. So, yeah, I'm going to keep it short. I think it's the people of those wards themselves. Thank you.
Okay, and to the next Simon Edwards.
Thank you. I think for every ward in the city, the number one priority is climate change mitigation and adaptation and resilience. But if I have to drill down a little bit, and I'll try and be quick, Western and Central Ward, my pick is Riverlink. Get that across the line, get the inner city apartments in there to drive a more lively CBD with cafes and bars and so on, with inner city living. Harbour Ward, the seawall and cycleway, possibly need to go further and look at an artificial reef, at least investigate an artificial reef to break up wave action and try and protect that road access. Wainuiomata, we've got a dog park over there now. We've got the shared pathway. We've got the town centre upgrade. We need to look after that suburb because that's where a lot of the growth is happening. 19,000 people living over there. So just continue that track. Eastern Ward, get the pool built on time and on budget with Green Star 5 credentials. It will be cheaper to operate. We're looking at a 20% bigger building, but 20% energy savings, and I think that's something to be proud of. Northern Ward, same as Wainuiomata, look after the people that are living there, get that Eastern Hutt Road retaining wall built so that it doesn't slip into the river, and look at what we can do about stabilising the hillsides.
Okay, next up, Gabrielle.
So I have the top three priorities for me apply to every ward. Number one, infrastructure. And a good example of that is when you go through Wainuiomata Queen Street, you can see there's a lot of works happening there. Part of it was originally the town centre upgrade. The local business owners there said that they wanted that to happen and occur during winter so that they can make the most of summer. Unfortunately, the workers, many of whom I've spoken to, found that the pipes, the water main gave way, and that urgently needs replacing, which is happening right now because it supplies all those businesses. As a result of this infrastructural issue, businesses are now losing between 30 to 50% of their revenue, and that's huge on our local businesses. So infrastructure is number one. It affects everybody. Number two would be resilience across the Hutt. I believe we need a comprehensive resilience plan which addresses some of those issues that Simon and others have just mentioned. But I don't think we can wait 18 months for the next district plan review. I think there should be an urgency to it because anything can happen between now and then. And so that's something that I would take a personal interest in. And number three is community safety. It's an interest that I have, particularly in our CBD. Everyone can just go through the Hutt News or stuff and see all the problems happening there. Our kids aren't feeling safe there. No one's feeling safe, both at the bus stops and on the buses. I think there needs to be a concerted effort there. And I know that cordial conversations are going on with police and other stakeholders, but I absolutely back an increase in investment on community safety.
Okay, next up, Mark.
Well, as a first-time candidate, I really don't have the detailed information to answer this question the way that some of the people have today. I'm aware that different wards have different transport issues, but they all have at least one, and infrastructure is said as a citywide issue. Those would be priorities for me, but also, as we've discussed, resilience, community resilience is really important. So those would be my three priorities.
Okay, thank you. Now it is time to get for closing statements, and can we please ask them to be on the trim side because we're about 2 minutes away from hitting overtime. So we'll start off with Kaz.
So kia ora everyone, just want to say thank you for It's in the Ballot for hosting this and for all the wonderful people that have been here to listen to us. I just want to encourage you to vote on the 8th of October. Make sure that you get out there and have your say and make sure you use your voice. Obviously, I'd love it if you'd vote for me. And I think a huge part of that is I want to make sure that we've got some different voices on the table and particularly making sure our community is at the table. And I hope that I could be that voice that represents and advocates for a number of different people, particularly those that currently aren't there now. Kia ora.
Okay, next up, John.
Yeah, just want to say thank you to Sam and the team. Great job. And to everyone that's running for council and or community boards, all the very best. I really hope everyone goes well. And just vote for John Middleton. I can say I'm truly passionate and I won't go away. I'll keep asking questions until I get the right answer. Thank you.
Okay, next up, Jody.
Yeah, thank you so much to these guys with It's in the Ballot. It's been awesome. Look, I'm not an expert, but I'm a good person, and I do have a passion for our city and for the people. I do like to ask questions, and I'll also push back when it's needed. So, yeah, I stand with an awesome group of people from United Hutt under that banner because we have some 4 key pillars that we all align with, and it's nothing scary. There's no conspiracy. They're pretty damn good values, really. Restoring rates, restoring financial discipline, people before politics, fix the broken services, and genuinely consult. Thank you.
Okay, next up, Mark.
As a world and a country, we are being subjected to 2 big scams that threaten our way of life. The COVID scam has been used for 2.5 years to destroy the fabric of society and small business. Central government has to a large degree pushed local councils and businesses to do its dirty work for it. This council jumped at the chance to discriminate against ratepayers on medical grounds. With a strong focus on human rights from my legal training, I would oppose such breaches. Worldwide data showing every day that the scientists and doctors speaking out against the mainstream narrative were right. EU Parliament has just announced an inquiry into the unprecedented deaths of children following the COVID jab, and the UK has stopped giving the jab to under 12-year-olds for the same reason. The other scam used at central and local level is human-caused climate change. In 1958, NASA identified that changes in Earth's orbit and axial tilt are in fact responsible for natural cyclic climate change. And in 1982, the National Research Council of the US National Academy of Sciences accepted this as fact. As a councillor, I would speak up in defence of our rights. I would also raise scientific evidence about issues such as these rather than jump on bandwagons without question. So if you want someone to stand up and speak out for evidence and your rights, vote for me, and also consider any other candidate who's been the subject of mainstream media hit pieces. A World War II
We need to start
bomber
wrapping
used to
up.
say, you cop flak only when you're over the target. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, Gabrielle.
Kia ora, thank you, Sam and the team, and thank you to our lively audience for showing up tonight. As I said before, I'm standing on my experience in local government and to get on with the job of governing. And on my integrity to make the right decisions for not just the people of today, but for our future generations as well. And my heart of serving our community. I'm passionate about Lower Hutt, and I'm proud of working alongside some great people here, whether it be the Manaaki Ability Trust as a company director for the Home of Compassion and also as chair for the Wainuiomata Community Board. I encourage everyone at home to vote for credibility and for candidates with a track record of service in their community. And I also encourage you to read my profile in your voter packs, which should have arrived by now. Kia ora koutou.
Okay, next up, Simon Edwards.
Yeah, look, massive thanks to the In the Ballot team for promoting local democracy. I'm proud to have been part of a council that is getting things done. We've attracted record government co-investment in Nainai Pool, Eastern Bay Shares Path, Riverlink, and soon, I hope, $98 million for CBD and Valley Floor infrastructure. It was a bit of a rocky ride at the start. We've brought in a modern curbside rubbish and recycling collection system that's cheaper for 80% of our residents while cutting wind-blown litter and diverting more than 9,000 tonnes of material from landfill. I'd like to get a plug in here for Brady Dyer and Josh Briggs, 2 councillors who are younger than me, who bring heaps to the council table, and each in their own way are really diligent about reaching out to get people's views. We've got new talent coming through like Kaz Young, someone who has huge heart for her community. But save one of your citywide ticks for me, please. I'm independent. I carefully weigh up decisions on the merits of the argument. I listen carefully to those who have different views from me. I can work collegially with just about anyone. I know the issues and I can hit the ground running. Kia ora.
Okay, next up, Daniel.
Thank you, Sam, and the team for from It's in the Ballot for this opportunity. And I'd just like to say I've got a mechanical engineering background. I work in IT currently. I am a problem solver, and I'm an ideas guy. And I would really like your vote. Vote Daniel Roark for local democracy.
Okay, and next up, Simon Gibbs.
Thanks. Thanks for hosting, and thanks to everyone for coming out and supporting us. I'll keep it short. A vote for me is a vote for local communities, local democracy, bottom-up government, and a voice for people in their communities. Vote for Simon Gibbs. Thank you.
Okay. Now let's get ready for what's happening later on this week. Tomorrow we've got the Porirua mayoral race at Porirua College. So if you want to, if we can get the audience from here to put themselves up in Porirua, I'll be very much appreciated. And sit there and see if we can fill up the Porirua School Hall. Grandma has told me it fits a lot of students in there, and she used to be the associate principal back there in the 80s. So I'm going to take a word for that. Also on Thursday, our Porirua Māori Ward show is, we haven't confirmed it yet, but we're likely cancelling it or postponing. We're not exactly sure what to do. Both candidates have sat there and got to us to say they're unable to attend 2 days before the event. That seems to be, a recurring theme of when people do not attend. But hey, we'll be looking at what alternatives we can to see if we can make that show happen, or will it be, shall we say, cancelled, which I don't want to be doing that because it's one of our Māori wards, and that was the show that Stacey was meant to be presenting because, that's our rule is Steve's on the Māori World, she gets to present the Māori Ward shows. On Friday, we have got the Greater Wellington Regional Council Upper Hutt constituency show. I'm just trying to think, how do you say, I haven't got my sheet on me to read out what the Māori version of the word is for tonight. I know it's got kairangi in there, but the rest of it is probably a bit up there. You can guess how it's going there with thinking. So we've got that Friday night at Awaken Church. If we can get the audience to move up there, we'll be very pleased with that. And we have got the weekend off at the moment because we had a nice, lovely one. Porirua City Council, another clash. Petone Award show has been postponed. It was meant to be Sunday the 25th, but it has been postponed to Sunday the 2nd of October. So, doing it. But that's probably good because we've got to change our clocks back this Sunday for daylight savings. And then on Monday, we have the Otaki Ward debate for the Kapiti Coast District Council. So if you want to travel all the way up there, we're in the Otaki Memorial Hall. And then next Tuesday, we've got Takapū Northern Ward for Wellington City Council at Waiora, which for those who don't know is Alex Moore Park in Johnsonville. So that's there. Can we thank our candidates for coming out tonight, and for the candidates last night who put their feet to the It's in the Ballot fire? You did very well and brought in some very informative answers, and thank you for supporting our women's suffrage special last night, which is, it has definitely sit there and just shows It's in the Ballot is about the team, not just the host in front of the table. And thank you to our audience and our crew tonight for making this show happen. And we'll see you all back tomorrow at 7 p.m.